It's the Friendly Fire Show, episode 231 for the midpoint or so of March 2023. I am one of your co-hosts, Steve D. Wright, and I forget your middle name. I should know that. And joining me is co-host Ben.
That's right. Maybe there's some things can stay as a surprise.
Middle name, initial Salter. I was trying to be clever because we're talking about Leon S. Kennedy exclusively, almost exclusively this week. He being the protagonist of RE4. I was going to just restart, but let's just leave this all in. This is the kind of quality that you should expect from the Friendly Fire Show.
This is unique. This is the real stuff. Leon's back. So, I mean, he was back a few years ago in Resident Evil 2 Remake. Now he's back again in Resident Evil 4 Remake, which doesn't feel like that long ago.
But this time he has a slightly different haircut and a slightly different leather jacket that could cost, I think the same price as the place I was staying at in Tasmania, maybe $3,000 per that, schmick leather jacket. Also the president's daughter and stuff. He's not wearing the president's daughter. He's just saving her.
She still follows you around. I'm sure it's going to be as annoying as hell because it's going to be a faithful remaster. Why don't you launch into what we're doing?
That's what we're talking about. So I'm going to hit start on a stopwatch very soon because we have 8 minutes of what we're going to try to do is squish in as much as we can. We're not going to stop talking after 8 minutes, but I'm going to take that 8 minutes and put it on a video that we can share way ahead of this podcast. So if you're listening to this and you're watching our YouTube channel of YouTube videos, I'll say YouTube one more time, probably a bit of deja vu, sorry. But what we thought we'd do is, if you're just listening to this, we'll talk about Resident Evil, but you can also, technically, if you want, go over to YouTube, look at the gameplay that we're talking about and discussing as we're discussing it, so you get a little bit of an idea of what's happening. Anyway, let's talk about it. We had probably about 15 or 20 minutes of footage, I think, from Resident Evil 4 Remake to watch. It's some stuff that we've kind of seen. We've definitely seen it when the game first came out many, many years ago. This is the new remake version. But they've showed some of the stuff that we got to see as part of the PlayStation State of Play a couple weeks ago by the time you're listening to this. What are your big takeaways? To me, Ben, it still feels like what I was saying about Dead Space. It's it looks the same as I think it does, but I'm sure if I went back and looked at, the old GameCube RE4, it would look a lot dated and muddier and older. But it looks like the game I think it should.
Yeah, it's exactly the same, which is that was basically what we said about Metroid Prime Remastered. It's how you think it looks. So I mean, watching. So we're seeing someone play the game. It's not a cinematic trailer; it's actual gameplay. And so the video that you may be able to watch by the time you're hearing this is kind of Leon Kennedy walking up to, I guess, some of the villages, and they have that, if you recall Resident Evil 4, big tentacle thing, guys, that when you shoot them in the head that explodes and they kind of come at you. They look a little bit more intense than I think the original Resident Evil 4, so certainly some changes there to how the enemies move. But how Leon moves looks exactly the same to me. So besides the fact that he can move and shoot at the same time, but it's still it's a very slow move and shoot. It's not like you have full mobility. He still looks kind of tanky, a bit kind of a lack of mobility. But that's part of the game. You're always meant to be a bit like that. That's how the villagers move as well. And there was always that kind of linear path and that invisible wall style thing that kind of funneled you along the way. And it looks to have retained that. So I'm sure it is probably a little bit more fluid and more open than the original was, but as you say, it looks, and not just in looks. Those other games we just spoken about kind of looked how we remembered, but they were totally different. I think this looks like it kind of plays as it did originally as well, and I'm sure that's not really the case. It looks like how I remember it being played.
Yeah, well, it's that weird, annoying thing of watching someone else play a game. One, you want to do things that the person controlling it isn't doing, but they're also doing that, I'm a developer showing you my game, so Leon's walking at a crawl and they're panning the camera left and right, being ooh, look at what we've done. Where I feel like it's gonna feel faster because you're not going to be doing that as the player. You're gonna be holding the run button for most of the time and going around. I think you're right about animations and stuff, and those the Ganados with the head tentacle thing, when they do the little swipe across horizontally, that looked exactly the same as I feel it does in the GameCube and ports of RE4. The biggest, in terms of the gameplay or the general gameplay loop. There's a couple changes. The first is to Leon's knife. It's durable, so you're going to have to go through and find extra knives and use them if you want to have that as part of your arsenal. To the point where in the bottom right corner of the screen, there's like your health green circle,
nice.
which will expand. Yeah. There's a little knife one there too.
And you see that when he's fighting. So some of the footage is the boss fight against Krauser, and you kind of see that degrading. It's a knife on knife battle, and yeah, that wasn't like that in the original game. So
no. And
a bit different, but
there's a lot going on with that knife. You can deflect like pretty much any enemy attack. And it's like these big sparks and like all these animations happening. And that can open up for, to get yourself some space, or you can, shoot someone in the leg and do a melee thing like you were doing. The suplexes are back still, or not back, the return. So people have been saying, even from the state of play stuff, it looks more like an RE6 kind of style of a combo of melee and shooting. I hope it doesn't go to that extent, because I had a lot of problem with RE6. But
well, I'm going to assume there will be more melee, like more of that knife combat, because they've added these mechanics in, and I don't recall using the knife much in Resident Evil 4. Like, I used it to open crates to save ammo. A lot of time spent holding down like L and whatever you need to do to open something. But that was about it. Like, not a lot in combat, because it wasn't great. So yeah, I'm going to assume
I would do the cheeky like shoot an enemy when it's on the ground, swipe it 4 or 5 times to save ammo.
Yeah, maybe that.
Well, so we saw 3 main parts, I guess. And if you're watching the video, or you can go and watch the video, you can probably see what's going on. There's the underground kind of like cave with water bit that was right after El Gigante, the giant guy, or one of the giant guys. Yeah. There's the castle with the catapults and like the crazy fireballs. And I guess part of that was the weird dude in the cell that had his, he was all bound. And you had to like ring bells to distract him to get his thing on his back. And a knife fight with Krauser. Not the knife fight with Krauser that you're maybe thinking, the one on top of like the tower that you actually got to do. The knife fight that we saw was the one that used to be a cutscene in the old game, and now it's playable. So they've taken the cutscene with the 1 or 2 quick time events, and it's literally just a playable sequence where you have to, hold your knife, attack, defend, hit cuts or quick times, like once you've staggered them to do something, or to evade an attack. It looks cool. What did you think about that, I guess, specifically, if we're talking about Krauser?
Yeah, I think it looks better than it used to. Certainly the quick time stuff in Resident Evil 4 is its downfall. Like, if you play that again now, if that's what feels super dated. And so I think, maybe they've got a better way of doing that potentially. We didn't see anything like I always think Resident Evil 4, that dodgy run, when it's kind of like the boulders are coming after you and it's like, run. And that was the first time I died when I played it the first time, because I think I put the controller down, and I can still remember that. That might still be in the game. We didn't see it. The thing which is sticking out to me, having a look at it quickly now, is Leon's hair is unbelievably shiny. And I can't unsee it.
I'd call it luxurious, personally. I have no
maybe
qualms.
It's just such modern lighting or something, but boy, that's a shiny style.
Same voice actor from RE2, from what I can discern. I'm sure that's even true. I could have looked it up. The voice actress, or voice actor, I should say, playing Ashley sounds like Ashley, but like is obviously different. But I don't mind the very few lines heard. The merchant, who we did see as well, same Aussie accent, but doesn't sound the same. That one's I'm a little bit upset about.
One of the most iconic voices in all the video games, and they haven't got the same guy back. That's disappointing.
Well, we can just mute it when he's there and just do it ourselves. What are you, boy? And
that's it.
Yeah, there you go. I love him. He's great.
Yeah.
And the other, I guess, the other change, while we're still on this like 8-minute sprint, is that Ashley is not as spongy, I guess, as she used to be. And in the footage, we've seen her, like take a hit from a catapult and not die, but just get downed. You just got to go and like pick her back up. She gets carried away by some Ganados, and you just shoot him like you do normally and pick her back up. It looks like less of an annoying escort mission kind of situation, but of course we haven't played it, so we're not sure yet.
I don't know, the fact that they're still doing that, pick her up and walk away with her, that was the most annoying part of all of it, and that's still definitely in the game. We've seen it, so Yeah, maybe they've toned it down a little bit. Maybe they've made her a little bit less of a liability, but I still feel. I mean, it's part of the game. Like they're remaking this way more faithfully and true to the original than Resident Evil 2 and 3 because they were total different generational remakes. Resident Evil 4 introduced this style to Resident Evil, this over-the-shoulder style, which we're still playing today. It's kept basically its same style, slightly modernized, but it's still the same game. So it's had to stay closer to the original, and I think that's the big thing here. I think it's looking kind of like how we remember it. I'm sure it's actually a pretty big jump. Looking forward to playing it, but it's not blowing me away to the degree of Resident Evil 2.
Well, yeah, and if you were expecting something like a RE2 to RE2 remake, it's just not going to happen, or else the game would have to be completely different. Though it worked in Dead Space's favor. I think it worked in Dead Space's favor, though, because we didn't get a port on every platform that ever existed since, a console was created. And RE4, despite having really bad controls still, has been on everything from the GameCube until now. Like, quite literally. I have probably like 7 copies of it on various platforms, which means I've played it probably 20 times, which means I'm excited for this, but probably less excited just because of all of those factors. What Capcom really needs to do is add in a whole bunch of stuff that makes it meaningful. And what EA Motive did with Dead Space and adding in all those different side missions that kind of like added lore at the same time they weren't contradicting lore, that's going to be really important. And I guess Capcom has said that you're going to get missions from the merchant, so maybe that's that stuff being handled. I really hope so, but I also don't know what they're going to be able to do that's groundbreaking.
Yeah, it's not as exciting for all those reasons that you've just outlined. Like the original game is still good, and we played it a bunch of times, so it's not the same as going back to Dead Space. It's certainly not the same as going back to Metroid Prime. They're the two kind of remakes or remasters that have come out this year in the same category. I played Resident Evil 4 most recently, probably like I'm going to say 5 years ago, maybe a bit longer. Certainly on an Xbox One, so not ancient. And I think I might have even tried it on Switch. So recent enough that I remember it. Before that, I played it on anything and everything. I played it on GameCube, PS2, and Wii as well, I think. Probably had it on PC at some point. I'm basically trying to say I played this game a lot. So I'm excited to play a different version of it, something that kind of feels, I think in a way, and we always get caught up in the, is it a remaster? Is it a remake? No doubt this is a remake, but I think it might feel like a remaster in that it's still newish enough, and I played it so many times, and it's saying so true to that original game. It might just feel like it's a little bit updated, more so than the other remakes or other re-releases, I should say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to play it. It's being such a monumental game that has been it's like Marge Simpson's dress. Like it's been reused and kind of repurposed so many times that it's hard to get as excited as some of these games that we hadn't played for so long. But it is a different way to play it, so it's still exciting in that way.
Yeah, I think Capcom thought it was clever with some of the stuff they showed in these clips. Like the first clip, or like I don't know, I don't think I have them in the right order in my brain anymore. But the one in the underwater bit where you can drive a boat, like you can drive a boat around now rather than being kind of like fade to black and like you just appear at the other place that you're supposed to be. Like, ooh, you can drive a boat. The end of RE4 driving something similar was probably like one of the most frustrating bits to me because I just kept, anyway. And in that underwater sequence, there looks to be either a moved puzzle or a puzzle in the vein of that one that was at the side of the church where you first run into Ashley with like the different symbols and like sort of a clock face. And if you were looking around the walls, there's like yellow spray paint that has some of those symbols. So like, I don't know if that's just kind of like a new take on that puzzle in a different place, or if it's like just meant to evoke that kind of feeling, but it's a completely different kind of puzzle. But like, ooh, a puzzle. I don't know if that's as exciting as Capcom wanted it to be.
But also, it's not just for us. Like, it's for all the people who might have played more recent games. They never played this, even though it's on everything. It's potentially too old. In the same way that I'd never really played Resident Evil 2 until the remake because it was a PS1 game, and I'm not playing a PS1 game now. It's too dated to get into it. Resident Evil 4 would feel like that to a lot of people. It's meant to be somewhat dated, as we've kind of said. Like, it's meant to be a bit clunky. That's part of it. And it seems like they have captured the right part of that, but modernized it enough to kind of bring it to that audience. So it seems on the right track. But yeah, we played it so recently. It's hard to kind of think they can really change too much. Like it's an extremely recent game to be getting a total full remake, as has
Yeah.
happened.
Well, and Dead Space took some stuff that people hated, like shooting asteroids in a stationary chair, and changed it up where it was actually like a good change, where it still has the like the same story beats are accomplished, but in a very modern way, which is less punishing and ultimately more enjoyable. Um, I'm wondering if we're gonna have like the boat fight after the
Yeah,
village. I'm wondering if we're gonna have like a giant statue of the little dude whose name I forget, who was also he was in the footage that we got sent.
Salazar.
He looks creepy. Yeah, like are we getting a giant? Do you have to run from the giant statue as it comes towards you? Um, and I'm also kind of concerned a little bit because the blue medallions that you could shoot for extra weaponry. There's like I think there was two major areas where you could do that in the original game. And when we were looking at the catapult area, like far later in the game, there was definitely another set or maybe a moved set of those blue medallions. And I just don't want it to be padding. I don't want to have to go to like 17 different locations and, always be on the lookout for blue things to shoot. So I hope Capcom has provided a
I
nice
think they will
balance and
change
not just
stuff.
like
Yeah.
new stuff for the sake of it.
Well, I mean, there were rumors they're going to cut out the whole castle section towards the end, and for the longest time, I never really remembered that. Like that wasn't part of my memory of Resident Evil 4 until I played it again. But that all does seem to be in there. We
The
saw the
castle or
castle.
like the soldier bit. The soldier bit at the end probably could go.
Yeah, well, I think they were talking the whole castle bit
Oh,
at
there
some
you go.
point. But in the same way that Resident Evil 3 cut out quite a big chunk. But it seems to be the full game, which does make sense. Like it's not a super long game. It's probably like 10 hours or so. So uh, you don't really need to cut anything.
It's kind of long. It overstayed its welcome
Yeah, it's true.
a
But
little
certainly
bit.
the first half is the greatest part of Resident Evil 4. And that's the main thing I'm looking forward to. Like the villages, the whole setting, really cool, and something that we haven't really had again, even in other Resident Evil 4 games. There's been things inspired by it and kind of similar things. Resident Evil Village, for instance, very villagey,
Yeah.
but not the same way. It didn't feel the same as Resident Evil 4. And so that I think is going to be still fun to re-explore. And certainly if you haven't played it for a while, like that very intro of the original game where you're kind of in the house and Leon's like, man, what's going on? And it's like the one villager is like, you okay, buddy? Like that's awesome. Like that's a pretty iconic moment in game. So I think when I start to think about it like that, I do think it's worth the remake. Like it's a real top shelf game and
Yeah.
it's memorable for a lot of people. It was such a big deal when it came out in 2005 that I think it is worthwhile. There's only a few games of that kind of vintage which are less than 20 years old that I think would justify it, and I think Resident Evil 4 is probably one of them. Very iconic. There is a risk with that though, because of course you risk tarnishing that legacy.
Well, RE3 kind of soured people, so hopefully RE4 is a positive step. Like, and they've already confirmed that Mercenaries is coming out. I don't care about Mercenaries at all.
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather we get the Separate Ways DLC, which was focused on Ada. I'd rather get that than Mercs, and I don't know if that's been confirmed or either way. But that's on my wish list, not Mercs. At least Mercs is like a post-launch thing, which is free content after the fact. Hopefully they don't tie any achievements or trophies to it after the fact either, because ick. But
Are they releasing a cool chainsaw controller? Like that was a big deal for Resident Evil 4. You can play on a chainsaw.
they're not. But I'm sure someone will make one. Maybe Rudism, our friend over in New Zealand, will. He'll make one out of a real chainsaw though, and don't do that at home,
Tough.
children.
I did try to play the GameCube version on that. Very tough. Like it's a fine controller, but it's very bulky. Like it looks cool, but not practical at all.
Funny
somewhere in my-
that.
I don't know what it was. Just like that's a product of its time. That type of thing does not happen anymore. And that was all part of it. Like it was this cool game that was going to be on GameCube, which was the kiddie, console, which just had Mario and Pokemon. Didn't even have a good Pokemon game on it. It had like basically games for kids and Eternal Darkness. Like that was the console at the time, and this was very different to that. I mean, I was like 12, so it was fine. And then
I was older, but enjoyed it all the more probably.
Yeah, I think that was part of the excitement. It was kind of like a more of a grown-up game that wasn't really meant to be on GameCube, but it was, and it was probably a better game for it, because if they developed that as a PS2 game, it would have been way lower quality.
Yeah.
Like the PS2 port was definitely a downgrade in a lot of ways. Sold way more. A lot of people probably played it there instead. But yeah, the GameCube version was definitely superior. And then the Wii version was better than that. Like it was proper
Oh yeah,
widescreen. Pointer controls actually made sense. Probably made it a bit too easy in the
yeah, but it
computer
was still
because
fun. I
it
I
was, yeah.
I didn't mind that. That's some good Wii waggle integration.
Yeah.
The I know the child Ben didn't care at the time, but the slightly not a child older Steve who had been like invested in Resident Evil since it came out and was convinced that Capcom was gonna like let us take down Umbrella. That's the one big thing I think that people at the time were like really upset about. Like, it just starts and it's like, Umbrella's gone. Like, no,
Yeah,
that was the
totally
whole
different.
thing. That's what they were supposed to do. So maybe if they're looking at ways to kind of invigorate and add to the lore, like that's a good place to do it. Just like something that would kind of let you delve back into that kind of lost period of time where Umbrella just, decided to quit. Not that they did. Anyway, I'm getting way too much into Resident Evil lore that no one cares about.
Yeah, they might. I mean, did they change much in like Resident Evil 2 that would make you think they would do it now?
Probably not. But a man can dream, can't he?
It's Yeah, they might do things differently. They probably got the feedback from RE3. I'm sure they thought that was a slam dunk as well. RE2 was so well received, they probably thought we can phone it in a bit, we can cut it down, we can do it quick. They definitely made that game super quick. It came out unbelievably fast after Resident Evil 2.
Yeah. The
Surely they've
start
taken
was
that
great. The
feedback.
start of 3 was really, really good. And then it just kind
Yeah.
of stopped and lost steam and then just like cut a whole bunch of stuff out and just went, that's good enough.
Yeah, it certainly from what we've seen, it looks like they've learned from that. It's the full game. It certainly feels like Resident Evil 4. It definitely looks like Resident Evil 4. And it does seem to be what I want to play when I'm thinking RE4. Whether or not it's drastically different enough to really warrant it, and it's going to kind of keep that. Like, what did Resident Evil 4 get on Metacritic? Like a 96, 97 or something. That's very few games get that. That's the level we're talking. Don't know that a remake can do that so soon. But I just want a game that's fun. I want something that takes me back there, and I'm glad to have revisited it, and something that people who haven't played it or never really got into it because it just felt too dated can now actually experience and enjoy and get into it, because it's my favorite Resident Evil game by far.
Well, it is not mine, but it's very much up there. I think RE2 in both its forms takes the top spots. I don't know. We'll see. I would almost prefer a new, like RE9, I guess I'd have to call it now, getting away from the Ethan stuff and just going more back into what this is with a new plot and maybe, some characters coming back.
I definitely think they should do that. I think we don't need another first-person style.
No, yeah.
They probably will. I feel like they're gonna do the.
Well, they've even kind of clawed back and put Village in third person. So
yeah.
And I think this is the last one of these that they can do. So then all of the RE games are basically modern. Like, I know that RE5 is still tank, not even tank controls. It's just stand and shoot. But that's the only real.
I would love them to go and do Resident Evil 1 in this style. Like, I know they've got the remake, but that remake is 20 years old and it's in the original style. Like, it's not the over-the-shoulder modernized RE2 style. That seems an obvious one for me. Don't know why they haven't done that. And then there's like Resident Evil 0. I think you can probably miss that, but it's like
Zero.
There are options.
But yeah, this and the additions to the remake, the first remake, the GameCube version of RE with all this like extra stuff, like that's extra lore that they built in about Lisa Trevor that was amazing. So like that would be cool to see in the new, well, not even not the new style, but this different style. But yeah, just big new ones.
You like that Resident Evil 1 remake? It was super well received, and it came out like 4 or 5 years after the actual original game. Maybe 5, 6, but like certainly less than 18 years. So this one does feel close. That one was way closer, and it was still good.
Well, yeah, same control scheme, but like the visuals were so greatly enhanced, and there was this new content. Like it felt like a new game compared to like like the weird polygons, like Jill's head is a triangle, and you go to the GameCube version and it looks like a real person for real, not like me like dragging my parents down to the PS when I got Resident Evil 2 and making them watch the cutscene and being like, doesn't this look like a real person? And like Leon has like 3 tubes of like for a neck. Like it was a huge change, and that's the problem I guess between RE4 and RE4 remake. it does look better, but it looked like a real person running around real environments, and now it's like a slightly more HD person running around slightly more HD environments, with most of the mechanics being the same.
Yeah. That's the thing. That jump from like PS1 to GameCube, one generation, only a few years, but it was a huge leap from the first to the second gen of 3D consoles. Less so now. And yeah, this is like 3 or 4 console generations removed, Resident Evil 4. But it's been ported every time and updated slightly. So there's already a version on your Series X or your PS5, which is certainly HD. It might even be 4K. I don't know at this point. Can't remember. Probably. So yeah, like it's that's the other thing. It's not like we're going from the last time you played this, it was that 480p GameCube 4:3 version, and now we're getting this. Like if it was that big of a jump, like that's not what you're remembering. You're not remembering the GameCube version. You're probably remembering the Xbox or the PS4 version that you most recently played, which has already been updated, was already HD, was already widescreen, and so that also probably makes it harder to see the big change.
Yeah, and like granted, when you play the Xbox version of RE4 right now, it doesn't look that bad, but like the control scheme is a nightmare. But even then, if you play that and you play nothing else, after a couple hours, you just get back into that, and then like it kind of wrecks you for new games again. But then as soon as you play a new game and try to go back to RE4, you're trying to use your right stick to control the camera, and it is a mess. So like that'll be a good thing about this, hands down, no problem. I guess that question of whether or not you can suck it up and just, you know, like hold one hand behind your back and play the cheap version of RE4, or if you're prepared to drop 110 or whatever for this new fandangled version.
Yeah, that's where we're getting into with games now. There's new versions, and Dead Space had the same thing. You can play the 360 version on Series X, and it's way cheaper. I think it's even free. It's in Game Pass probably. Yeah. Same as Last of Us. There's a way cheaper version. If you really want the best experience, it's probably going to stay true here, although we don't know because it's a remake, not a just straight up res version with the same gameplay. Probably worth paying, but yes, if you're not sure and you're on the fence, we'd probably still recommend playing the original version first to see if you like it.
Before they remake Resident Evil again, they need to remake Code Veronica, because not enough people played Code Veronica. I can't believe I forgot that, and I'm sure people have already written me an angry tweet or something because I've neglected our weird cousin Code Veronica, the not numbered Resident Evil sequel, which reunited the Redfields and brought in Wesker, kind of re-brought in Wesker. Anyway,
if it sells well, I think they'll do that. I think they'll do that before they do Resident Evil 1 remake. For some reason, they don't seem to want to do that.
Yeah, well, maybe it's like they don't want to wreck a good thing.
I think it's too
well, and I guess depending on what happens with RE4, maybe their minds will change.
We'll see how they go. We've been pretty negative in that sense, but I think just because it's like it's changing something so dear to you that we're not negative, we're skeptical. I think we're both going to love playing this game, but we're just a little bit skeptical about what's going to happen.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm ecstatic. I'm so excited for this. I just hope it's not. I don't know. I don't even know what I hope it's not. I am actually excited about this. The gameplay looked great, but it wasn't game changing in my mind between RE2 and RE2 remake, because it can't be, because of all the reasons that we talked about. And I think that's a detriment, but it's not really anyone's fault, and it's nothing I should really be holding against it.
No, it still seems great. It's very much part of the 2023 remit at the moment of playing stuff you've already played. That seems to be all I'm doing all year, but it's different versions of those games, and you know what? They're all great, so I'm looking forward to playing it.
The good news is, like, there's probably like 10 or so, or even less days before you can get your own hands on it. We'll certainly have extra coverage and stuff. If you're on the fence, you can find out what we properly think in not too many days from now, I'm imagining.
I should have done the maths. I don't think it will be next week. I think in the week after that episode, maybe then we'll be talking about it. Certainly after we've had a bit of time for us to play it and for you to play it. Talk about it a bit more in depth, what we actually think about it, having played the entire game. But for now, that's probably it for this week. Yep, quick show's a good show. How do we find you on the internet? What do you want to spruik? I have no idea. I think I'm still on Twitter if it's up. Ben_Salter Twitter. Nothing to spruik. You can go and read whatever I did most recently. 10 out of 10 for Metroid Prime Remastered. That was ages ago now, though. So read it anyway. Well, when I was in Tasmania, I already told you this. I had the chance to see Ben _Salter at Mona, but I didn't because
I only have room for one Ben Salter in my life. And that's you, buddy. I'm SRight AU on social media, unless Musk buys them all and tanks them, or Meta wants you to pay money to be verified or whatever, and not a chance. Stevivor reviews. Probably RE4 soon. Have a good week, Ben, and everybody else. See you next time.
We'll see you next week. We don't know what we're talking about. We'll be talking about whatever games we've actually played.